We haven't talked about My Hero Academia on this channel for a minute. Well, I'm excited to tell you the final season has dropped. Actually, all the episodes. I was being very patient and I was thinking, I learned my lesson last time. I had some judgment upon my videos, and I understand I don't need to be going in depth on everything that happened, but I'm going to do like a general summary, a new recipe I've been doing. There's certain series that I will go a little more in depth, like Gotcha Good. It makes perfect sense since it's the first season, and maybe other first seasons that way. It's kind of like getting into the groove of things and getting into the lore. We're already in here. We're here for the final countdown. What is there to really get into? Action? Yeah, you want to hear a guy tell you about every battle move? No, I don't think so. Don't want to yap too much in this intro, but I just wanted to say, man, is the My Hero Academia fan base very judgmental. And I don't want to make anyone mad because I know they're not all like that, but you mislabel one of the characters, you mislabel the quirk, or don't remember a name. Oh my goodness, they'll get you. But I just wanted to say, I still love you guys. I still like My Hero Academia as well. I think it's a awesome thing. A fusion of manga and American superheroes into one. That is something else, and they make it perfect. It's almost looked upon as mainstream now, which shows you it's pretty successful. So it has shown. Episode 1. This was very anticipated. They do not waste any time. We see All Might put on an armored suit and fight against All for One. The suit mimics quirks by using various tech. This is just an awesome fight where All Might is putting everything on the line to hold back All for One. We also get to see the resolve of Aoyama, whose group is trapped by Kuninida. It creates this really epic moment. He shoots his naval laser. This is when Invisible Girl is there waiting for him that whole time. She reflects it right back. What a victory that was, but now it's time to get to the ending. All Might is given his all. It gets to this point where he mimics the same ability as Star by high beaming All for One. This is being done by a giant satellite that sadly ends up blowing up. All for One is finally able to get back up. All Might is very injured, and he can't really do much here. All for One is coming directly at him, but suddenly, All for One can't move. And it's revealed that Stain is the one that comes to All Might's rescue. Episode 2. So we find out how Stain was able to find All Might. So the first thing is he actually overheard a radio call going on with Hot and Cold, and as well, he looked around to find All Might's blood to eventually get to him. So I feel really bad for Stain. He was here for a very limited time in this fight. He did technically turn this into a 2v1 for at least a second or two, but very quickly, All for One dominated, and Stain sadly loses. He gets killed, and it looked like he got punched so hard that All for One destroyed his whole hand. At least it looked like it burst it. This is when we see something pretty crazy. Right after All for One turns to All Might, where he blasts him. However, Hercules reboots and it has an emergency shield, lasts of its life. All Might survives, but he's in a very terrible state where he can't even hardly move. All he can do is crawl at this point. With All Might now down, All for One makes his next move, which is trying to use Sludge Warp on Shigaraki. However, Shigaraki stops him. Instead, All for One decides to fly over, but not just by himself. He is now carrying the injured All Might, which Deku sees, and he's really fighting himself back the whole time seeing this. The symbol of peace tries to make him move. All Might locks eyes with All for One, and it's almost like a memory flushes back. Suddenly, it's revealed that All Might is gonna try and kill All for One once again. However, it gets stopped. Now for the ending. I can't do this one enough justice. It's just one of those things you have to watch. Very sad, very intense. No one is able to get to All Might, and All for One has him right in his arms. He prepares himself to kill him. He raises him up and begins to break him apart. I think this is supposed to be a homage of whenever Bane broke Batman's back. I hope that's what it is, because that would be a really cool connection type of thing. But slowly, as that's going on, Deku is watching, and it is getting really sad. At the same time, we get to see Deku as a kid, Bakugo raise up, a lot of stuff happens, and it's the end of an era and the beginning of another. So sadly, All Might gets killed here, which is really sad. We lose Stain and All Might in the same episode. That is tragic. Episode 3, forgive me. I hope I'm not the only one that thought this, but it seemed like All Might was dead. So while All for One is tearing All Might apart, we get a reaction from Bakugo and Deku. We see Bakugo charge straight at Deku, which Deku takes his hand, and at the same time, he uses Second Shift, launching him straight at All for One. He picks up the speed. He also begins to use his explosions. With all the momentum, he's able to take All Might from All for One's hands, and they land on top of a building. Now, there's this whole thing where All Might is having a dream sort of state where he's talking to Night Eye. Somehow, he was able to avoid this death that was earlier foreshadowed, and this is all because of a promise he's made. Now, back to the rooftop, we see Bakugo get up and he coughs up some blood, and that's where Edgeshot comes out. We get to learn that the reason that Bakugo was actually able to live was his power, but of course, he was kept alive by Edgeshot sewing him up. Bakugo then prepares to go back out. However, All Might calls him over. We finally got to have that touching moment that Bakugo's been waiting for his whole life. He goes over there, he gets on his knees, not what you're thinking, guys, and All Might gives him part of his tech suit. Whatever's left of it, not sure how important this is going to be, but it is very touching. At the same time, I want to say it was sort of laughable whenever he uses Bakugo's hero name. Just something about it, comedy, but I love it. This man is insane. So Bakugo's first move is coming directly at All for One. It's lightning fast. It happens in like a second. He blasts him right at his face. Doesn't kill him, however, we do get to learn how his new evolved ability works. So his pain makes a secondary explosion happen. Man, just look at it. It's like fireworks now. Even though Bakugo is making this huge effort, All for One's big motive is trying to get to Shigaraki to give him the rest of the quirks, but this pebble is somehow getting to him, and this is because it reminds him of a prior user of One for All, the second one. For this one, I skipped around a little bit. There was some updates on some other fights and smaller things going on, but I just didn't see them as necessarily important to the major plot line that's going down right now. All you need to know is Bakugo is going crazy. And there is one other thing. You have Shigaraki, who is getting really interested in getting rid of Bakugo. So we're going to have to see how Deku is going to keep him levered down over there. Episode 4. The beginning of this episode actually lets us understand where All for One and Yuichi kind of took their turning points. So it turns out that their mother was a drunk in the streets, and she was very arrogant. That is a part of her meta power, which was inherited by All for One. Sadly, she passes away because All for One took all the nourishment, and Yoichi, on the other hand, was the really frail one that didn't have any powers. Now we get to the part where All for One changes for the worse. This is what he became today. So Yoichi and All for One started reading comics together, and All for One ended up idolizing the villains. He literally took All for One, One for All to heart. Now we get to learn the end of Yuichi. So two agents end up raiding the hideout of Yuichi and All for One, and one of those is the second wielder of One for All. The next thing we see is the two running together, Yuichi and the second wielder, as well as All for One chasing them. And we get to see this jealousy overtake One for All. He kills his brother because if he can't have him, well, no one else can. Boom, dead. But there was something I saw in that in a way, and I'm starting to see it more. he does love his brother, but there's this curse from his mother that makes it like really wicked and bad. I don't know if I'm the only one seeing that or if I'm just messed up in the head. Now we come back to current day, where All for One is thrown off by Bakugo, and this is because of the resemblance of Kudo. However, he's noticing it's just his will. He is not related to him. At this point, it's like Bakugo has All for One cornered. He could try to use his warp, however, this will not work on Shigaraki because of his strong will, and the only other person he can go to is All Might. This is when he does the only thing he can do. He uses every bit of power all at once, making himself into this giant ball of terror. Like it's literally every power unleashed at once, and he's going to try and push through all the way to Shigaraki. However, it seems that All for One is coated in Bakugo's sweat, and he makes him blow up, which actually makes him fall down to the ground. All for One continues to fight back, because after all, this is my story, he says, and we actually get to see he's weakened because Hawks is able to enter his mind. But Bakugo, on the other hand, he's having flashbacks about everything with him and Deku. This isn't just his story, it's our story, and he goes in for a huge attack. After that huge attack, All for One has now turned into a baby with another rewind. This time, he begins to crawl to Shigaraki. However, Bakugo stands right in front of him, barely standing in a very weakened state. However, he keeps his foot, and then all of a sudden, All for One plays one of his evil cards. Out of his baby mouth, he shoots out a bone dagger, and it almost looks like it hits the head of Bakugo. However, Bakugo catches it in his mouth and breaks it apart. All for One has been finally put in a corner where he can't win. We don't get to see it happen, and my guess is this is because, well, he's in baby form. I don't think seeing someone blow up a baby via explosion is exactly the best thing to show over air, so it makes sense. But All for One absolutely gets obliterated, and then Bakugo wants to stay up just like All Might, but he ends up just going down. However, his hand is up in the air, so it's sick. They do him justice. This was beautiful, and let's go Bakugo. He's shown character growth, which is always great. Episode 5. Deku and Shigaraki have now took this fight down on the ground, and already Shigaraki has begun destruction. As the two begin to size each other up, Shigaraki senses that All for One is now dead. Shigaraki begins to thank All for One for making him stronger. This is when he goes in for an attack, except Deku cuts off his fingers, but there is a but. He ends up taking away Shinomori and still in the quirk Danger Sense. This puts Deku in a major disadvantage, but he continues to fight on for the crying boy inside of Shigaraki. Along with this same mindset, we get to hear from the second wielder that plans to go with this and tells Deku to let go of One for All. Deku gets confused on what he means by let go of it, then he gets explained pretty simply. So it turns out whenever Star fought Shigaraki earlier on, she was able to make a place in him that isn't repairable. And then, now, they are going to try and attack it. But not the same way you would think. They're going to end up giving up one of the quirks. Second, who wants to sacrifice himself to try and test this, is going to try and enter this and do more damage without giving Shigaraki a quirk. Now that I just thought of it, I could have just said transfer. But to end this episode, we get to see Deku do this insane transformation, Black Whip, literally trying to go all out. And for the very final seconds, at near his hands, we see where this sneaky transfer is gonna happen. Episode 6. So, with Deku now in this Black Whip form, we get to hear his plan in order to transfer the quirk. It's to pass some blood off into an open wound. This is a really good fight. So Shigaraki begins off trying to do more destruction, which Deku prevents by unearthing bits of it using Black Whip. This then goes into Deku using Smokescreen, where he actually spreads blood on his cape, faking out Shigaraki. This is when he's finally able to go in for a big punch, but Shigaraki at the same time is beginning to protect himself, but there is a successful transfer. After the successful transfer of seconds, this is when the memories of both Deku and Shigaraki begin to blend together. As these memories begin to blend, this is when Deku has another opportunity to go in. Everyone within him begins to run to his fist, and collectively, he has to make through Shigaraki and his guard of hands. Once through, he makes another impact, except this time, he gets shoved back. The transfer of One for All got rejected. With this Deku versus Shigaraki fight ongoing, a camera comes in and it begins recording. This is where we get an update from some characters that haven't exactly got any screen time just yet. Throughout this, Deku continues to fight his hardest. Eventually, he is able to get through Shigaraki's defenses and finally able to do another successful transfer. Except, this time, everyone is able to do the transfer except one who gets rejected. It is Nana. This leads us to the end of the episode, where both Deku and Nana are now to guide the memories of Shigaraki, ending up at his childhood home. Once Deku goes inside with Nana, this is where they see the memory of his dad hitting him when he was younger for discovering the picture of his grandma. Episode 7, we continue where we left off. As Nana and Deku both see what's going on, they try to get to Shigaraki, however, there is an invisible barrier. They push through and finally it breaks. Nana has realized what she has done. She goes in to hug her son Kataru and says she is sorry. At the same time, she actually disappears. Deku is then transported to the beginning of Shigaraki's big accidents, and we get to the part where he's beginning to come at his sister. This is when Deku instead, in kid form, begins to tussle against Shigaraki. Both Deku and Shigaraki's emotions intertwine. Deku continues to tussle against Shigaraki and actually sacrifices his arms, essentially making this the defeat of Shigaraki. But Deku begins to see a memory of someone else that isn't his or Shigaragaki's, and this is when we have the reawakening of All for One inside of Shigaraki, where he reveals to Shigaraki that he has actually been made into the way he is, all because of him. He has never had a choice, including his quirk, which actually got replaced by something inferior that just caused destruction. He's became the perfect vessel for hate. All for One then takes over his body and takes a new form. After All for One takes over Shigaraki's body forcefully, he then turns on Deku, who has lost both arms, beginning to blast him, but all at once. Classmates Zero, Ejiro, and Sato come to the rescue of Deku, as well as right behind Deku, portaling in Mr. Ozawa. We then get a recap to see how Mr. Ozawa was actually able to use this teleporter. So it turns out him and President Mike were having a moment with Kaguri where they were trying to shake him, and after the death of Shigaraki, it's almost like Amaro was able to awaken, and then power was being able to be used. This then turns into Mr. Ozawa gathering other heroes to go help out. To end this episode, a large amount of reinforcements teleport in, and this includes a bunch of our 1A classmates. So we're going to be getting that big battle that we've all wanted, where Deku gets to fight with his classmates. And we do have some plot armor here. Ari actually took off her own horn. Like, she straight up ripped that thing out, and Erasure takes it out and taps Deku with it, and he begins to regrow his arms. And it's only able to rewind 2 to 3 minutes in this form. Interesting. Episode 8. Once Yuichi is left, this is whenever All for One felt nothing, and now he believes that tragedy makes one stronger. Then we see him take this new tentacle form. As reinforcements teleport in, everyone works together to fight One for All. Everyone fighting together, plus Mr. Ozawa, inspires Deku to get back up. However, he is in this weakened state. Mr. Ozawa gives him some bandages, as well as a All Might shirt. So technically the shirtless guy from earlier is canon. Pretty funny, I can't lie. Now, Deku does still have an ember of One for All. Deku uses what's left of this power, as well as the help of his classmates and everyone out there cheering for him, to push him on. Something we also see is Eraserhead turn around after giving Deku some orders to see Kaguri's dark cloak goes out. Everyone is out there fighting the hardest, whether their condition is good or bad. Throughout this, Deku is getting closer and closer to All for One, and this is where he finally realizes that Deku has something that All Might never did: the strength of weakness. After tons of help, including cheering, Deku makes the big smash. He hits All for One using the combined strength of all 9 wielders. All for One begins to crumble away. However, this is a death fake out using quirks. He actually repairs himself. As we hear All for One's new plan, this is when Kaguri wakes back up and teleports over to All for One to beg for Shigaraki back. It's pretty crazy, so this created a big distraction. Out of nowhere comes Deku flying, thanks to Bakugo as well as Hot and Cold making a ramp. Deku comes shooting straight at All for One. He makes a huge impact, and this is all because Yoichi had remained left over, and that's how he had the power to do this. To end this episode, All for One as well as Shigaraki have finally been defeated. Episode 9. We're at the aftermath, where Japan is now getting help from various heroes, including ones from overseas, during the rebuild process. The trio of Bakugo, Deku, and All Might are all in the hospital. Bakugo has a badly injured arm that will need plenty of rehabilitation. Now, Deku and All Might in the same room are reflecting on the battle that just took place. During that, Deku talks about how he can still feel an ember of one for all. This is when Bakugo comes barging into the room and overhears this and realizes Deku is once again quirkless. UA is able to hold their upperclassmen graduation. 1A then becomes 2A now, with the same teacher, Eraserhead. Oriyama also formally announces he's leaving UA, but he does seem to want to follow a hero path again eventually. They also gain another classmate, Shinso. Classes 2A and 3 are given the task of helping with the disaster zone reconstruction. To end this episode, we get to see the Todoraki family gather together. They go to meet Dabi, who is currently on a ventilator and slowly dying. Finally, the family is able to make peace, and Ever is going to be retiring and he's going to spend his days coming to see Dabi. Episode 10. The Aftermath continues. For helping out, Gentle and La Brava have been set free. We also get to see Hawks let Lady Nagant know that she is also able to be set free. However, she doesn't want to because she's scared of the outside. Deku also pays a visit to Spinner to leave the last message that Shigaraki gave him. Shigaraki fought hard to destroy it until the very end. After Spinner hears this, he begins to go into rage, and we get to learn how much that Shigaraki meant to him. They really shared something in common. In the end, Deku is able to calm him down, and we learn that Spinner is going to write a book about Shigaraki and his great evils, which Deku does give him an idea to make a comic book, and Spinner's already thinking about doing some illustrations. My goodness, this feels like such a callback, but we get to see Overhaul gets paid a visit from his ex-boss because the gang is no longer. Basically, he tells them, I hope you rest in peace, throw the key away for everything you've done to Ari, say you're sorry every single day because of that. With another new year of UA High, we get to see the first years, who are very big fans of our returning Class A. They also begin on the reconstruction. Throughout this, we see that Iroka is putting on this fake face, and she is being very distant, including faking her own absence. We see as she ends up sneaking off, and she begins to cry because she is blaming herself for what happened to Toga. In the midst of her crying, Deku actually comes and finds her, and he finds out what she's crying about, which Deku can really relate to when it comes to Shigaraki. Deku then reminds Ochaku of everything that she's done for him, calling her his hero. So while Deku is trying to calm Ochaku, the rest of the class ends up finding them worried. And first thing that we hear from Bakugo is about Deku's ember, which the rest of the class get to know about. There is something extra I wanted to add. So Deku is looking at his hand, and we get to see that ember. It almost looks like it diminishes even more. We end this episode off with Oriyama's farewell party. Episode 11, the finale of the series. The president of Hero Safety, Hawks, and All Might are having a meeting together. Hawks wants to expand the hero billboard chart. This will include everyday heroes alongside registered pros, showing some real growth in the future. From All Might's words, a world where there are lots of great heroes. We get thrown off a bit, so there's this boy that is very down in the dumps. We get to see his backstory, very similar to Shigaraki, and as he's walking in the streets, he runs into this old woman that just so happens to be the same one that talked to Shigaraki, and this time, after deciding, she decides to step in, and we get to see change in the future. Speaking of future, we get to see that Deku is now a teacher at UA, and also a callback character, Koda, who has appeared from time to time, but I did have to search up his name, which I am not so proud of, is now getting ready to attend UA. Going from the future, we go to the past, and it's like a quick flash forward to see Class 1A finally graduate. After seeing the graduation, we go back to the future. We're in a classroom where fellow students are filling out their entrance exams. The kids are actually very excited, and we do get some callbacks to characters who found some very big success. This is very similar to whenever Deku first filled out his exam as well. There's this boy named Dai that really takes a focal point. He wants to become a hero, however, a fellow classmate sees this and calls him out for having a quirk that would make it hard. And there's very much a close connection to Dai and Deku. He's very similar in the terms that he idolizes heroes, and Deku is one of those on the list. He also goes to the All Might statue whenever he feels anxious. A news report is shown, and this is where we get to see the many successes of Class 1A members in the future. A part of that future news that gets brought up, we have Deku and Mr. Ozawa that are talking about how Bakugo has some pretty bad publicity recently getting mad at a cameraman. Deku laughs this off, however, he begins to reminisce about his times at UA, and Mr. Ozawa asks Deku, "Do you miss it?" It's something that Deku's already thought about, but he wants to use his experience to encourage others. After this conversation, we get to see Deku take a visit to the All Might statue. Quickly, things take a turn. We see two boys run in when one of them trips over. Deku jumps in to rescue him. At the same time, the boy from earlier, Dai, does as well. We're looking at a mirror moment in a mirror character of Deku. Essentially, it's made to look like this is going to be the successor of One for All. In case of that, we do get to learn what his quirk is. He can throw the saucer-like things in his hair. So we go from there to Deku about to leave for the airport. This is where All Might meets him to give him a gift. Deku's very own tech suit that was created by overseas friends as well as Hatsumi. A joint investment by the former members of Class A, especially Bakugo. Finally, we come to the ending. Deku skirts off to the side. He hears a radio call where a hero is needed. He gets out to see in front of him the entirety of Class A, ending the series with Deku now back with everyone else all together as music plays. What a way for a series to go out. Now, I did want to bring up they're going to be doing a special in the future. Not sure what content that's going to be, but I believe that's going to have to do with the extra volume of the manga. But looking at this season, I can't say I'm disappointed the way they went out, especially with Deku losing One for All. And it seems like he's going to be giving it to another successor. Now, that hasn't exactly been told just yet, but I suspect whatever content they have in the future plans, this will be something they at least talk about once. And the whole thing is Deku having the new suit, he's actually able to still use the power. Well, it may not be the power. He's using the power of tech now, which should have been absolutely further in the future, making it stronger than whenever All Might had his suit. I don't mean to tiptoe back and forth, but I wanted to talk about the Shigaraki and All for One fight. I honestly felt like the fight was over way too fast. And I know that Bakugo as well as Deku remain to be the main characters of this season, but I felt like a lot of the other classmates didn't really get to shine so much. There were some more than others, but mostly sideshowed. It really could have used a movie here, kind of similar to what Attack on Titan did. It would have looked so much better, where everyone was given the screen time. I do also understand if this is manga canon, which would make perfect sense. But I think for the sense of MAJ, everyone wants to see their character out there fighting and doing something. And that's like one of the biggest standouts about MHA. There's a character for absolutely everyone. And that's really the beauty of it. I felt like it was a little abandoned in this season. This isn't the fault of the people that are animating. It's just the source material. There's some things I just didn't exactly like. We also come to another thing I wanted to say. I felt like All Might should have been killed off. Deku should have had this urge to try and kill Shigaraki, fighting himself to also save him. Now, bringing everything back together, this final season was absolutely amazing. I thought they really pulled it off, and the way that they ended it made it to where it felt finished. You didn't feel like you had to watch more or watch another, but it kept it open to where down the line they could always do something with fellow characters. And the series as a whole, there is a reason why it's been popular for so long. A diverse roster of characters, as well as a story that shows the weak can become a hero. With that, I rate the series and the season as a 9.4. Tell me what you guys' thoughts are on the final season of MHA. Hope you guys stay safe. And until next time, peace out, guys.